Kia ora folks, welcome to the FWW Podcast. I'm Tommy. I'm a father, a medicine person, and a counsellor, and a musician. And I'm here with my good friend James. And James is I think he was going to be the second guest, but I think he's actually going to be the first guest on the podcast. And welcome, James.
Thanks, brother.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having a conversation with me today.
So welcome. Yeah.
I said to James about a couple of weeks ago, I said the kaupapa for the podcast is not, I said the kaupapa for the podcast for me is about me being vulnerable and honest about what I struggle with as a human, what I find hard with life, what I find hard with myself, and then talking honestly and openly about the solutions that I've come up with. I said it's not about and my idea of having guests on would not be to do interviews and hear people's origin story or hear their funny anecdotes or have them introduce the things that they're the most proud of, and etc., but would be to have to try our best to have a similarly organic conversation about the things that you have struggled with and that you have found solutions to yourself. And your reply to me was beautiful, brother. It was really beautiful, and it let me know that you really understood what I was trying to do. Now, we haven't had a conversation prior to the camera going on about things that are off limits, so we probably should have done that. If I say anything that's off limits, you can just say I won't answer that.
That's all right, bro. I'm an open book, man. There's not much that hasn't been shared already, so. Yeah.
Awesome, brother. So I thought I had a cordial like this with Saxon a couple of weeks ago, and she's asked me not to air that one. She wants to do another one with me.
Sure.
She wants to do a redo.
Yeah.
But she started off with a topic that was quite intimate between the two of us, and I thought I'd do the same thing if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go for it, bro.
So you and me were at a meditation retreat, and during that retreat, I and a female participant at the retreat, we had a special connection happening. The special connection never got sexual, but we were definitely doing a lot of hand holding and kind of cuddling and stuff like that. And you came and said to me, hey Tommy, I need you to back off from being in her space and stuff like that. And I got in touch with you after the week was over, and I said to you, James, hey, I felt really shamed by the way you said that to me. I felt really hurt by the way you said that to me. And instead of you telling me that I was wrong and I wasn't spiritual and I didn't understand what was going on, you apologized to me. And you said, I'm really sorry if the way I said that to you, Tommy, hurt, and I'm really sorry if you felt shamed. And that whole week, I had just, my respect for you and love for you had been growing and growing. I didn't know you too well before that week, and during that week I was just so, I just felt so much love and so much care for you, and so touched by you and the way you work with people. And then I felt hurt on that last day when we had that interaction. And then when I went to you and spoke to you, and I think I was a bit stroppy in my voice message that I sent, and instead of, I didn't know what I expected, but you came back with such humility and grace, and that gentleness that you responded to me with. I just wanted to honor that and say that moment made my love for you, the depth of my love for you, grow exponentially.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, we all make mistakes in the way that we communicate, and especially when we're in plant medicine spaces where we're feeling a lot as well, it's like the simplest of communication can have such a profound effect on people. And there are so many imperfections in the words we use. And I think it's nice to note them sometimes and to take ownership for it and to just apologize and say I'm sorry if it came across that way, and equally to acknowledge there was a further source behind that where it wasn't actually coming from me. I was following what I've been told to do by someone else. Yeah. Someone else had told me to have that conversation with you, not me. Yeah. And so again, it's like when if I'm playing a middleman, well, again, I need to apologize for doing that wrong as well, and I should have let that come from whoever else needed to say it, not being a middleman. But that was something I was working through at the time as well, was being in this role of working underneath someone and following, and being in that follower role for so much of my life. And that was it playing out. You know, we spoke about it earlier as well. Like, you know, that relationship when you grow up with your siblings, like, and the ones you role model and idolize, and for me it was my brother, you know, and like for many people sometimes it's an uncle, sometimes it's an auntie, but there's always someone in our life that we gravitate towards through just a natural energy that pulls us to follow some. And I find myself there following, and that was a perfect example of that playing out in a negative way in my life. And like for that, because it was never my intention to have that, but if I had have been truer to myself, I wouldn't have actually been the one in the middle in the first place.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Your this following thing, like, I didn't have someone like that in my life. It's not that the opposite was true. It's not that I was such a born leader, and I'm not sure it's that, but I didn't actually have anyone. It might have just been that I had an absence of candidates. No, I'm the youngest. Yeah. I'm the youngest, but I'm quite a bit younger. And then my brother was neurodivergent, so in some ways I'm more fit the middle child than the youngest in some ways. Yeah. But you know, for you with that following thing, and you said you've been on a journey with that, like, what do you think has been the flaw, or what's wrong with following someone? Why is that not working for you anymore?
I don't think it's a flaw. Okay. I think it's only a problem when you start to feel like not positive feelings when you're following.
Yeah, sure.
And so like there comes a point in time you're following someone and great, like things might be flowing. You're feeling amazing with those decisions and what's happening. And that's perfect. That's showing that you're in alignment with what you're doing. You're being fed back with positive emotions and positive rewards, which are telling you what you're doing is something that actually aligns with you.
Totally.
When you're following and you're moving through things and you're starting to get negative feedback through your emotions, that's like alarm bells ringing, like this isn't resonating with you. And I guess that's the first thing to listen to, is like when you start to get that negative feedback in your life, like where is this coming from? And it's always because you're out of alignment with what you're meant to be doing. And sometimes it's hard, and most of the time we try and ignore it and we suppress it and squash it, because it's easier just to turn Netflix on, or to smoke a joint, or to have a cigarette or a beer,
totally.
You know? But like the real thing is like really just acknowledging that it's there in the first place, and then like just inquiring, like, okay, this means I'm out of alignment with myself. What am I meant to be doing?
Yeah.
And that's the real big question, you know. And for me, that's been a really big journey in the past couple of years. It's like, like if I've always been following, like I've never really actually seen the future for myself. I've seen someone else's creation of my future, but I've never really seen that myself. And I guess like for me it's a process of empowerment. And I find when you're following, or someone else is always doing things and you're just walking in the path, it's a disempowering experience. You know, it's like there's no true essence of yourself behind that as well. And don't get me wrong, I believe there are people out there who just have a gravity to follow others, and that comes from our schooling and our education and the way that people want us to be. They want us to just follow like sheep. They don't want us to ask questions. They don't want us to have authentic thought and creative expression, you know. So I think it all runs so much deeper.
But who you're talking about following, they were in foreign countries a lot of the time. They weren't around you a lot of the time.
Yeah.
When you were away from them and you were still pursuing your own, your own medicine work, your own, different trainings and studies that you were doing, how were you following them if they weren't actively around?
So that's not when that was being embedded and encoded.
Okay.
That was programming coming through in really early ages of life.
Right.
Yeah. So from really early ages, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, my process of observing and picking up those same behavioural traits basically led me to be a very identical person, because I've witnessed that behaviour and I've adopted it as my own. So the behaviour is what's being followed. Yeah? It's not so much pathways or choices or decisions. It's behaviours. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. So it's not the specific details, it's more structural than that.
Yeah, like I find it was, and almost like an energy behind it as well. Like like I feel such a deep connection with my brother. Like I feel such a strong connection with him. Like wherever he goes, I always feel him. And I feel like there's always this constant exchange of energy. And like sometimes it's hard when that energy exchange comes out of balance.
Yeah.
You know, it's been more dominant on one side or less dominant. It's still a new concept for me. It's something that I'm still contemplating and trying to unravel and work out. So I want to acknowledge that like what I speak, I'm just trying to find words for it really. It's such a new concept and a thought wave for me, and I guess it all stemmed from being in situations where I felt out of alignment with myself.
Yeah.
And
how would that feel? Would that feel like sadness? Would it feel like anxiety? Would it feel like fear? What emotions would it be like?
Depending on the space I was in, like yes, like sickness in the stomach, like nausea. Yeah, like real bad nausea, and like a heaviness. Like, I don't know how you explain heaviness, but it's like it just comes and hits you, and it's like your world's just like, whoa. You just feel like everything's been squashed and caved in. Like everything's just been really squashed in, and like I guess in that way you feel like almost like you can't breathe fully. You feel like a pressure around you.
And are you talking about feeling like this for minutes or hours or days or?
Like sometimes constantly, like there, like at points in time.
Yeah.
You know, but like I guess.
And you've got this loving partner and this beautiful life you're creating, and yet still there's this heaviness and there's this...
Always. And like I think that heaviness is like partly my own, but it's exacerbated by the collective as well. And like that heaviness that I carry comes from many different sources, and this is something else that I really like. I have been diving into recently, a real cause of like my own mental health in my teenage years. It's like, yeah, there was like a lot of trauma in my childhood growing up and like abusive relationships and all the rest of it. But a real big thing that actually put me to the edge was waking up and seeing what was happening around me.
What the fuck
at
we're
age
doing.
17,
right?
You know, like coming across all the studies of like MK Ultra and like the psychedelic experiments they were doing in the 70s to use propaganda for brainwashing and all the rest of it. And like at the age of 17, I just saw things. I saw the corruption. I saw the greed. Like I saw the physical, the 3D chaos. And there was a part of me that's like, what the fuck is the point in this? Like, I don't want any part of this, you know, like there's no hope, like, you know, and from there just stoop deep into depression. You know?
So at 17, you hear this information about all this crazy shit that the world's doing, your eyes open to it, but your eyes don't, you don't also then get in your gaze awareness of conscious communities or other alternatives?
No,
or anything?
not at 17, man. I'm still at school. I'm still going to an all boys school. Like, that's fucking so much trauma in itself, man. Like, never would I wish that on my worst enemy. Like, it's just a bunch of animals. Like, like, it is so harmful. Like, I look back at my schooling and it was nothing short of traumatic. Like, and the person you have to become to not get bullied and to not get abused, it's like it's so unauthentic.
You couldn't show up at your school looking like that and not get bullied,
bro. Like, you know, but like again, I had that behavior in me, like that I'd learned was like
you knew how to mask already.
I don't get bullied. I'm gonna bully. So that again, I'm having to do things out of fear. Yeah, I'm acting out of fear because I'm afraid of being bullied. So I'm having behaviors that are coming from a fear response, and that in itself is such a disalignment to the self. And you get to age 17, you don't even know who you are. Like you've been around like so many other boys going through puberty, and you've just been watching them and comparing yourself and judging yourself, and you get to that age and you're just like, you have no idea who you are. You know, you have no idea that there's anything more than what they've taught you at school. You've been indoctrined.
Wow.
And like my experience, like I'm grateful for my schooling. Like there's a real big part I'm grateful for. When I left school, I realized how much I'd actually learned at school. In comparison, but there are so many elements of there that I find absolutely traumatizing. And
when you're saying you're grateful, are you saying you're grateful for all the shit you realized you didn't want to be, or was there some actual good stuff too?
Some of the knowledge that I learned.
Some of the knowledge, right?
Knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, like some of the knowledge that I learned was actually, it was good knowledge. It was useful, you know, and I could find myself applying it. outside of school, and I found that was a barrier in people who had gone to other schools compared to our school.
Yeah.
So I went to Hibs, to Hutt Boys in Trentham.
Oh, yeah. Is it, what's the I? Is it international? Hutt International?
Hutt International Boys.
Is it a fancy school? Or is it a
not
private
so-
school?
It's like $6,000 a year or something.
Okay,
Like,
not fancy,
not
but
somewhere in the
mid-fancy.
middle.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, right.
But it's like their pass rates for things are like 100% every year. Like NCA 1, 2, 3, like 100%.
Okay.
Like you go there, you can't fail basically.
Right, okay.
So I'm like.
But not because they're really supportive?
Nah, like just they jimmy the system. So like in year 9 you're doing like level 1 maths credits, and year 10 you do like level 1 science. So by the time you get to year 11 you've got like half your credits already. And
Oh,
like,
shit.
So they just start things early. But
Wow.
yeah, I'm grateful. Like I use a lot of what I learned at school. Like when we built this space, like I had to go back to all the maths that I'd learned, and like
Geometry and
yeah,
shit.
like
Yeah.
figure all that out, like how to get a perfect square and like how to get triangles and all the rest of it. And it was like
I don't know any of that shit. I went to Wellington High. I got stoned all the time. There's lots of pretty girls around. I didn't learn any of this shit. James got an education. I had fun.
And that's what I mean. I'm grateful for it. Like on top of the elements that like I'm still unraveling in my behavioural system today. Like there was a large amount of knowledge that I did find useful. Yeah.
But that school then, let's talk about generational stuff here. That school would have been consistent with your parents' values, your father's values or something, right?
I think I was limited with where I could go because Andy got expelled from 6 schools. So there was like some schools that were like, you can't get in.
Okay, well let's talk about this following someone. So your older brother gets expelled from 6 schools. During the time, just so you guys know, I'm introduced to his brother because I'm a drug counsellor going around every high school in the Greater Wellington region. I'm one of the alcohol and drug counsellors for the Greater Wellington region. I go around all the different high schools and I get introduced to your brother without giving too much away. But he gets expelled from 6 schools. You don't get expelled from any?
No, I guess I'd learned this was my role as the youngest child as well. Like I was very observant and like I was learning lots through what I was watching and through what I was observing, and I could see like how those situations of being expelled from schools or getting in trouble, I could see the stress it caused on mum and dad.
Yeah.
Like I could see the stress it caused on their relationship as well. And like that was something that I never wanted to cause or inflict on them. So I made sure that like what I was doing is I never got caught.
You're sneaky, eh? You were sneakier.
Like
you were sneakier.
More cautious. And I guess I learned from the mistakes and still made the same general mistakes, but never really got caught for them until sort of later on in life. So yeah.
Did you struggle yourself with addiction? Was addiction part of your journey at all?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like I can remember from
just so you guys know, I'm asking him that genuinely. I don't know the answer to that question. So me and James, I love James. I've spent a bit of time with him. We haven't had a lot of heart to heart, so I actually don't know a lot of his history.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like addiction was like something that crept into my life early, and again, like when I've been suppressing so much trauma from like personal abuse in my young years of life, and also sexual trauma that I've experienced in really young years of life. When it got to the age of 12, 13 years old, like there was so much going on under the surface that when I smoked my first joint and I found some relief to it, it's just oh my God, like I can live, like I can function and not feel again that heaviness, that nausea, that sickness in the body, that squishing feeling.
So I said on the episode, I said people think marijuana is the problem. I was like, marijuana was the fucking solution, right? Like drugs was the solution. It wouldn't be a permanent solution. You couldn't, it wouldn't work forever. But at that age, when we might have been suicidal or self-harming, we found drugs and it was like, oh, what a fucking relief.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I found that relief, and then I also find throughout years just like constantly telling myself how good it was and how much it was helping me, but never looking back. It wasn't until I got to the age of 25, so I must have smoked every day since I was 13, 14 to about 25, 26.
Oh shit, okay.
And like varying in quantities as well. But it was the age like 25, 26, I stopped. And I stopped for maybe 3 years of smoking. And it wasn't when I looked back, I started to really contemplate like how much it had been affecting my life and like the way in which I was using that medicine was, again, it was out of fear. It was out of fear of feeling. And like, again, it causes such a disalignment in oneself. And I started to realize like how much of my my interest and motivation had decreased. Like when I started smoking, and I just like, you know, like I just didn't want to do things. Like I never picked up a pen. Like I wish I did more art. Like I wish I played music back then. Like I wish I had a creative outlet instead of just like sitting in a car listening to the worst music that you could possibly listen to. You know, like being brainwashed by the shittest music that you could listen to. And I like some of those songs come back on when I hear them. I can't listen to the radio anymore. Like I can't listen to like, even when we sit at a restaurant and they have music playing, I have to ask them to turn it down because I find that frequency so harsh and disruptive. And I go back and think of what I listened to at like age 12, 13, 14 whilst opening the mind with plant medicines, and I'm just like, my God, like that was another epic level of programming that came in as well.
What's some of the shit you were listening to? What were some of the bands?
Oh, just like rap and stuff like that. You know, like it's all abusive to women and themselves. It's all about drugs. You know, like young ages was a lot of Eminem. Like, a lot of Eminem. Like Limp Bizkit and like all the rest.
That kind of shit too.
Like, I listen back to it now, and like I only listen to what other people listen to. Really, you know, like again, our musical choices are like. We can only listen to what we're exposed to. Kids, so
you just said something that I wasn't sure. Were you not playing instruments? Because you play a lot of instruments now. When were you playing instruments as a teenager? Did you play guitar and shit?
I played guitar for maybe like half a year when I was 15. Got like a black like rock metal guitar, you know, like as you do. But like again, I was so out of alignment with myself. Like being in school, like being a person that I wasn't meant to be, or I shouldn't have been. I was so out of alignment that like the music I was listening to I didn't even enjoy. So when I'm playing guitar, I'm learning stuff I don't actually like to listen to. So there's like no motivation, there's no interest. And I didn't realize that at the time. You know, I just thought there was a block in like playing guitar. But it wasn't until later in life I picked up the guitar. I guess it's actually been a while now, maybe 2019, so maybe 5 years ago or something.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
So James plays, I've been playing guitar solidly since I was 13. James has been playing it for fucking the last 5 years. He plays so much better than me on that instrument and every other instrument. It's ridiculous. So if you're older in your life and you haven't learned an instrument yet, there is still time. You can learn an instrument as an adult.
Oh, it's easy. Yeah, like when you strip away trying to learn other people's music, like I found that the most challenging thing when I had a song and I was trying to learn a song and like all the tab and you're trying to remember the words, you're trying to remember all the different notes on this tab, and it's like, how the fuck am I meant to remember this whole thing? You know? And that in itself was like a real disheartening thing when you're trying to play but your memory is restricting your level of capacity to play. So when I bought a guitar after my first eye ceremony, I had the intention.
Your first what ceremony?
My first eye ceremony, my first grandmother ceremony. That was over in Australia.
Okay, cool.
I had to...
As ayahuasca. We talked about the grandmother medicine as ayahuasca.
Yeah, that was something that like really opened me up back to a creative outlet. So I bought a guitar and had the intention of just not learning songs, just learning just how to make sound on it. And
nice.
Like it took maybe 4 months and I had most things remembered from what I'd done for half a year at 15. And then I went to another ceremony, which was a Brazilian style ceremony, like 50 people, 12-hour ceremonies, drink 3 cups of medicine, and it's just music the whole time. You know, like it was the first time I'd been around music like that.
What was the first ceremony style?
The first ceremony was a shambles, man. It was just a guy who'd been to Peru for like a month and brought some medicine back. And like like I'm grateful for what I learned, but it was a horrible experience, man. It was we sat in Australia and we sat at this guy's house.
So this guy's not a shaman. He's just
like I don't know. People out there, they have the best intentions, you know, but like everyone has to learn somehow, you know. So you can hope that from these first ceremonies and experiences, people learn enough to be able to grow and expand on them. But we sat at a guy's house whose father died there, and his ashes were buried under the deck, and we drank medicine on the deck.
Yeah.
And the father's son, whose house it was, sat in ceremony with us.
Yeah.
And on the second night, he just fucking lost it, bro. Like he just like started screaming and just going to like absolutely crazy. So the facilitator took him inside and left all of us outside by ourselves for about 3 hours.
Oh, shit.
Just nothing going on, bro. Like no music, just left us there, and I was like, holy fuck. And like this was my process, which is a really big learning experience actually. When I felt him shift and I felt his energy and his panic, I had this conscious thought.
The facilitator's panic or the son's panic?
The son.
The son, yeah.
I felt his energy. I was like, I can take some of that from him. And I had that conscious thought, and I was standing up dancing as I thought it, and as soon as I had that thought, I just got smashed to the ground, and I just purged for an hour, like literally like non-stop purging into a bucket for an hour. And I learned in that space how intention like that, you don't actually really know how powerful it is. And when we have this thing like, I can take that from someone, and it's like such a profound experience. It's like, fuck, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be more mindful.
Brother, I wish I had learned that in my first ceremony. Yeah. I've only learned that in the last fucking few months, James.
I know. And so,
seriously, I thought that was what I was here to do for a little while. Yeah. I was very fucking confused.
Yeah, and I guess, hey, I want to touch on this because this is a little message that came through yesterday, a really lovely saying, and it's like, why am I here? It's, I'm not here to change anyone, I'm not here to change you, I'm just here to inspire you to change yourself. And like that takes such a weight off us. We don't have to actively try and shift or change the people around us. Totally. It's like, be authentic in yourself and ooze inspiration. So people sit with you and they go and pick up guitar the next day, and they start to learn music, or they start to draw and write, and it's like, just inspire people to be better people, like, and don't expect yourself to change anyone, because we can't really change anyone, can we? It's all that duty of ourself. Yeah.
So your first ceremony is like, this guy's he's had a couple of ceremonies, he's got some black market ayahuasca, he comes back, he's going to be a shaman now. You have that experience, and then your next one is a few months later or something? And this is a
couple months later, so it was at the end of 2019. I can't remember it. We drove 12 hours to get there. It was a long drive. We drove there in a day.
So you're in Australia or something? Because you can't drive 12 hours in New Zealand.
Brisbane, driving down the Central Coast. And it was myself, my brother, and my wife.
Oh, wow.
So it was the three of us, and it was Amy, my wife's first ceremony, so she'd never sat before, and I was super excited to sit with her. As a context as well, this was when I first started growing mushrooms. So when I left to go to the retreat, I had just pulled my cakes out to fruit. And when I came home, they were like full bloom, like full mushrooms. Anyways, the retreat that we went to, it was in a beautiful place. Like, it was in the middle of nowhere, and the space was designed specifically for ceremony. It had like a pyramid triangle sort of roof, and it was all made of glass, so you could see out the top as well.
Did they have a bunch of people's dead parents buried underneath?
No, nothing like that, bro. It was
whakapapa.
super clean, like completely off the grid.
Amazing.
And there was, I think the first night there was about 40 people that sat in ceremony, and the second night it was
40
about
people?
50. So it was like two big circles, and then a circle of facilitators in the middle. And they
had a lot of facilitators?
The facilitators are just musicians. So if you're a musician, you're a facilitator basically, right?
Okay.
Helpers. So,
is the main person holding space?
There's one guy who leads it, which is he's absolutely amazing.
Cool, awesome.
He's come through in so many journeys since then as a guide, and like such an amazing, beautiful teacher as well. So,
you mean in spirit? Like he's visited you?
His spirit, man. Yeah, and in person, like I have some conversations with him as well. He's such an incredible person. But it'll be like maybe 3 or 4 drummers, like a couple of guitarists, and then everyone sings. So you get a hymn book. Yeah. And there's 2 hymn books that we work through, and basically you just sing.
Wow.
Front to back for normally about 8 hours, and then they'll light the fire outside.
So people are on the medicine, looking at trying to read the words
in Portuguese, bro.
In Portuguese, totally.
So it's like the first time in there, I'm just like, like you've had 2 cups of medicine, and you're just like,
The words are the letters are dancing
like,
around.
How does this sound like what you're saying? Like the pronunciation is so different
bro,
as well.
it's not written phonetically. Just so you guys know, Portuguese is written very differently than how we would pronounce.
But little do we know, by the end of the second night, it's like you almost feel like you're fluent in it. Like that neuroceptivity when you're under the medicine, you know, and the neuroplasticity means you learn so fast. And when you sing with other people, like there's a reason why stories and information was passed through song, because we remember it and we retain it, you know. So when you're singing and you're in that field of sound, it's like it's influencing every single part of you, and it's retaining inside of your energy field as well. And I found myself like 6-8 months after that first ceremony, after the first Brazilian style ceremony, I would like find myself singing melodies in my head. What is that song? I only heard it once. 8 months later, it's still ringing through my brain. And that to me, it woke me up to the real medicine. And the real medicine is like, it's not the plants, it's the sound, it's the frequency, it's the music. Like the music is the biggest medicine, and like these plant spirits can open us up and help us connect deeper to the real medicine that is vibration and sound. And like music is just something that is so powerful. Like all music is medicine. Like it has such a profound way of shifting your state of consciousness, you know.
So you say all music's medicine. If we're going to talk about Limp Bizkit, so medicine in a way which maybe isn't so positive for us necessarily.
Yes, just like there's medicine.
Not to be too critical about.
No, but you're exactly right. Just as there's medicines that have very bad side effects.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Limp Bizkit has terrible side effects. So Interesting. Okay, so back to marijuana for a minute. You said you gave up for 3 years. You'd used it every day for 3 years. After 3 years, you'd used it every day for years and years and years. After a 3-year break, what gives you the confidence that it's going to be different now? Or do you go back to it going, oh, fuck this, I'm just going to get high again?
This is prominent. This is a really important part, because this is where the phase of cycles comes back through in my life as well. So the first cycle that caused really big depression was my waking up to the world and feeling helpless and feeling like there was no point in anything.
Yeah.
When I started to smoke weed again was at the protest. At Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah. And when it was ingrained fully was actually that post-protest depression that came about, which was caused by the exact same thing that caused my depressive episode at 17.
Right.
Feeling like there was no point anymore. Like you have this voice, you create something beautiful, and then it's come and burn it all down and squash you back out. You know, and like I felt like inside of that collective that was there, like there was a lot of mental health going on after that. There was a lot of depression. Like there was a lot of really lost hopes inside.
So just for people who might not know what protest you're talking about the protest against the mandates?
Yeah, definitely.
And the community came together at Parliament for, what was it? It was like 3-4 weeks or something?
Yeah, it was almost 4 weeks, I think. Yeah.
And then obviously it ended with, you know, the police came in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for your community, for parts of my community, after that experience, people were left feeling
suicidal. Yeah, like I would say suicidal. Like that was definitely a prominent thought going through people's minds, from what I felt, from what other people felt like. And there was so much more happening on those days as well, with things that were being broadcasted towards the people standing there. But that was another moment where I'm only realizing these things in the past few months as well, and piecing things together in terms of these cycles. But that was my realization of like, it was the same energy, it was the same thought form, the same emotion that was driving that feeling as well. And it was funny because when we went away for COVID, the day before we left for lockdown, I was walking in Wellington and I found a bag of weed on the ground. And I was just like, like I hadn't smoked in weeks, and I was just like, I'm just going to take it as a sign, you know?
Yeah.
And I took it up. We went up to Taupo the next day, and when we got up there was the alert gone out, lockdown happened, and we were like, So we stayed up at our beach house up there, and there's like, had some weed when I was up there, and started using that, and it was the first time I'd used cannabis since playing music.
Right.
Yeah. So I had my guitar, and in the space of 2 days, I wrote like 5 songs.
Yeah,
and
right.
Like, I come back to them now, and like, these are gems, like these are amazing.
Okay.
And I guess from that level, you know, I was saying before, I wish I had a creative outlet. Like I started to express myself, and I started to use cannabis and play music and sing, and I found it opened a different portal for me, like where I could access the flow state a little bit more,
right,
and not be so in thought of like, oh my god, like what am I doing? How am I singing at the moment as well? Like sometimes the brain tries to process everything and it blocks you. And I guess like again, like we have these things, like we start to feel like these positive things of being able to express ourselves creatively and be, again, ego attachment, be better at something, so we hang on to something. Oh, it's making me better, you know, it's making me make better music. And again, it's like generally who's to say that wouldn't have happened if I didn't smoke at all?
Sure.
But yeah, it's a process that I then started to try and shift my relationship with marijuana, to shift like how I was using it and what I was using it for.
Okay.
And I would stop using it like just walking around or doing random things, and use it before meditation or doing like mantras or before music or something like that. And I guess the way in which it was being used has shifted, but again, it's still, the use of it grew.
Yeah.
And I find myself now, this is probably 3 years later, like moving through the cycles of developing my understanding about cannabis and marijuana.
Okay.
And like realizing methods of which it's been consumed and what that causes. It was about 6 months ago I realized like that combustion method when you're smoking, and how it can cause so much stress sometimes inside of myself. It's like heart goes, everything goes quick, and it's realizing it's because there's such a profound shift in your state of consciousness so quickly. You smoke it, that instant gratification takes over, and it changes things so fast. Yeah,
because you go from sober to stoned in like 2 minutes or 1 minute.
Yeah, and
pretty
for
quick,
the body, that's actually stressful. For the body to shift that quickly, physiologically,
for the nervous system to go from one state to another that fast,
that's really stressful. So that's why when we smoke, we also feel a little bit more alert and aware. And what we don't realize is when we're in a stressed response, and maybe we've been like this since a child. I know I was definitely in that stress response. We turn to the things that keep us there. We turn to stimulants. We turn to things that stimulate the body.
Oh, it's like what we've become used to we're used to that response, to that stimulated response.
Because we're in that space out of fight or flight or fear of survival. Yeah. So because we're in a hyper-stimulated space, and then we start to deplete, out of fear we feel like to be safe we need to be hyper-stimulated. Okay. So we start to turn to things that stimulate us and keep us stimulated. Coffee being a big one, smoking, acting as that shift, actually stimulates and releases adrenaline as well.
There's this interesting thing that I learned about kids, like if kids get their ass kicked every night by their dad, right? And they know that they know when dad comes home from work, at some point they're going to get a hiding. They will actually agitate to get the hiding, because the anxiety about getting the hiding, the anxiety about getting the beating is worse than the beating itself. And once they've gotten the beating, they can relax. So they will actually agitate and play up until they get that smack, and then once they've got the smack, they can relax. And so there's something about this idea of thank God I've never smacked my son. I don't know, but there's been tension in our home at times, and he this is my eldest, and he's a beautiful boy. He's got a beautiful heart. If anyone's sad or upset, he will try and make them happy. But he also will cause a lot of shit. But I realized part of the reason he's causing shit is because he's seeing the tension in the house between me and his mum, or between, maybe I'm stressed after work or she's stressed or whatever, and he's seeing that tension and he's feeling it. It's unspoken. It's not overt. There's no hostility in the home. It's not openly hostile, but he just feels like, what's going to happen? Is dad going to lose his temper? Is mum in a bad mood? Whatever. What's going on between mum and dad? Are they fighting? Whatever, And he feels it, and so he's nasty to his brother or his whatever, and then he gets told off, and then it kind of releases. It's like, oh sweet, now I've been told off. The worst that can happen's happened.
And that state is actually a state of the nervous system called co-regulation.
Right. Okay.
So there's times in our life, especially when we're children, when we haven't learned to regulate ourselves. Our nervous system hasn't learned to regulate itself. So we observe our surroundings and we regulate ourselves based on those around us.
Totally.
So that's why we're super hypersensitive to other people's emotions and we pick up on them, because we actually haven't learned to regulate our nervous system. Now the funny thing is that most of us never do learn to regulate our own nervous system. Most of us stay stuck in this co-regulation state, and like that in itself is a really big reason why other people feel empaths. Like we call it empath as well. Feel other people's energies, because actually they were in a space growing up that was really stressful, where they had to observe everyone else's emotions to understand how they should act and how they shouldn't act as well. And then that never gets broken through. You then go into a school setting and you're still in this hyper awareness of like, what's going on with other people? Are they stressed? Are they relaxed? How do I respond? And then you go into a workspace and then you're still, and then you get to the age 50 and you're just like co-regulating off everyone else around you, you know? And it's something to be like, to be really mindful of as well. Is that it's not easy to self-regulate, and like quite often it can take a long period of time of detaching from things around you and from people around you to actually be able to self-regulate. And most people don't have the capacity in their life to separate from their jobs or their space for a month or something like that and do that, you know.
Where did you land with marijuana? Are you do you
Thank you, man. So at the moment, like my journey has gone from realizing how smoking is causing like a stress response in my body, and then it's just like, cool, I'm not going to smoke, so stopped smoking and started vaping, at low temperatures, like 180 degrees, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna. And like again, what I found was even when I vaped, I still felt like I wanted to smoke for the first few weeks. Like, and what I was noticing was like there's this process of like instant gratification, delayed gratification. I'm sure you know a whole bunch about that, and like realizing, well, the vaporizer was delaying that gratification to get the reward. Instead of like having a 5-minute smoke, it's like 40 or 50 minutes to have the whole thing on the vaporizer.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah.
The same bud that you'd smoke in 1 minute takes like 40 minutes?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
oh, okay,
40,
wow.
50 minutes. Yeah, so it's a lot longer process. And like initially, like I started to feel much different effects from vaporizing it. I didn't get like head high or like feel stimulated. I felt more effects in my body. Like really felt a lot of relaxation. Like I've had ongoing issues in my body. Like I broke my neck 6 years ago and had ongoing pain all through my back and my spine.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
For like a long time afterwards. It was just before I moved to Aussie, and I started cable hauling a month after I fractured C7 in 2 places, and just like never let it heal properly. So I had ongoing issues. So I don't say I use it for the pain. I definitely use it recreationally as well. But it was something that definitely helped with a lot of what I was always carrying, which was just constant pain. And then from the vaporizing, like I started to find, because you're then sucking on something for like 40-50 minutes and it's like 180 degrees, like it starts to affect your mouth and your tongue and like just dry things out and all the rest of it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stop vaporizing, and I cooked a big batch of butter up, and I've just been using edibles for the past sort of 6 months. And I find like a little bit, a couple times a week, and a cup of tea. And just have a beautiful rest as well. We're doing meditation and play some music. And like that's where it's at now. So I like to be able to think like my relationship has changed significantly.
It sounds like it has, it sounds like it totally has.
The big process for that actually, which I'd really love to share with people, is something of actually understanding the things in our lives that provide an instant gratification to us, that instantly provide a sense of pleasure or fulfillment. And like generally those are the things that are going to get you stuck in traps. Like,
fuck you. Fuck you.
And even if it, and so why do you think a nicotine patch is provided? Again, it's delaying that gratification of the cigarette. So if you do have addictive tendencies, quite often it's not actually to that substance itself. It's to the instant gratification that it's providing you.
Sure.
And if you stopped smoking it and you started consuming it in a tea, would you still be addicted to it? And I'd say no way, not as much. Like, I think it would be much easier to break that addictive tendency because you're not getting that instant gratification.
Right.
For myself, once I started using butter, I didn't feel like I needed it. Like after 3 days of using using the butter in teas. I no longer felt like I wake up and I didn't feel like I needed any weed.
So what you're saying in some ways is that we've got the addiction to whatever the thing is, right? The addiction to the marijuana, to the nicotine, to the caffeine, whatever. But we get a secondary addiction to the dopamine.
I believe that's not secondary. I believe that's primary.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
okay. So the dopamine hit of I'm going to get this thing, and you take it and you get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you change your methodology so that it's a slower release or it's whatever, you get rid of the dopamine hit, and you're just getting the marijuana, or you're just getting the nicotine, or you're just getting the caffeine. And by getting rid of the dopamine hit, you reduce the addiction.
The craving, the craving's coming for the dopamine, you know.
Right,
right.
And like interesting.
That was my experience, and it's been my experience in the last 6 months, and it's been something I've been trying to share with people as well, because after such a long time of 12 to 26, throughout that time I tried to stop cannabis so many times, and it never worked, you know. And in the last 6 months I found it so easy.
Wow.
I found it so easy to feel like I don't need it.
So at the moment you said a couple times a week?
Yeah.
On those days when you're not having it, you're not craving it in the evenings, you're not thinking about it in the afternoon, I can't wait till Saturday comes around.
No, man, it's so nice actually, because there's such a long time where you smoke it, and smoking is worse, because that for me is when I really started to think about it so much, you know. And I even wake up in the morning and you're it's almost the first thing there. When I stop smoking, when I stop vaporizing, I wake up and it just you almost still feel like it's there, because it has such a longer half-life in the body, you know. When you smoke, it's in and through your system in 40-50 minutes.
Yeah.
When you vaporize, it's a couple of hours. When you consume it, it's 6 to 8 hours, you know?
Yeah.
So the small amounts that you have, they cause such a longer effect that, again, they almost are retained inside of the body.
Yeah.
When you have something that lasts a really long time and then it slowly fades away, the body's less likely to know if it's
the difference.
The difference, yeah.
There's some muscle memory left over or something.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
You know, whereas if we're shifting that nervous system, 40 minutes super high, and then we come down, and then we're low, and then we're super high again, it's we're shifting through that space of the nervous system.
Okay, so when you have the butter now, say you have some butter and it takes an hour or so to kick in, and you're feeling a nice level of stoned or whatever, feeling the effect in a way that you're enjoying, are you not an hour or two later going, I'll have a bit more butter,
Nah, bro, no way.
No?
Nah.
Wow.
No. It just there's no craving for more of it, and again, because it lasts so long, for myself, I use a cacao butter.
Oh, nice.
And I find it takes probably 2.5 hours to have a full effect.
Oh, okay, right.
It's a real slow process, and quite often I'll have it before bed and just go to sleep as well. You know, if I feel you know, maybe the moon cycles are crazy and there's lots of weird energy happening.
Yeah.
And I just need a good sleep, I'll have a little bit of butter. Or if I want a creative day, you know, if I want to go out and explore and do something as well. So it is it's an evolving relationship, and I like to think that it will continue to shift and evolve as well as I do, and I'm sure there'll be points in my life where I don't need it at all, you know, and I like to acknowledge that there are times and cycles in our lives where we do, and to be able to just recognize that within yourself, I'm in a place of growth and expansion, and it's quite uncomfortable at the moment, and I need something to support me through this process, but I know that as this unfolds and that growth starts to come to its end of that cycle, that will no longer be needed, because there's discomforts and those things won't be there. And I think it's really important to ask yourself, why do we use these things, and just be honest with yourself. You know? And my honest thing is I've been working through a lot. I've been working through heaps, and I've found a really great companion to help me work through, not go around anymore, because I have the capacity and the knowledge to be able to go through these things instead of bypassing them, but to actually work through them just with a little bit less sensitivity, you know, just a little bit less sensitivity, which I'm sure a lot of people who watch this can resonate with. We are super sensitive beings, you know.
I get this thing, I don't know if you get this thing, I get this thing with marijuana, and I wouldn't say it's the marijuana, I would probably say it's me. So for me, I don't think this is the marijuana itself. I don't think this is the spirit of Santa Maria. I think this is my own internal response. I have it, and the next day, my consciousness, or not my consciousness, but an aspect of me that I probably refer to as the kind of chancer, the risk taker. I wake up the next day, and he makes me feel real shit, so that I'll feel depressed and think I want some more marijuana. Like he literally he's agitating inside of me. He's showing me things in my life that he makes me feel negative, so that I'm more tempted to have a bit more of the marijuana again.
And this is something that I was learning through this whole process of cannabis consumption as well. Was like, traditionally, cannabis was consumed and cooked, and because it's cooked through that cooking process, a lot of the THC is
traditionally by who?
It's cooked off. If you have a little look at people who use it over in the Amazon and stuff like that, where it grows wildly as well.
Okay.
It would be used as a food as well, like not smoked,
Yeah, cool. Okay.
And when it's cooked, it's converted, like the THC almost gets burnt off at the higher temperatures, and you're left with high CBD, low THC strain.
Oh wow.
What happens nowadays, man, is that you end up with super high THC, super low CBD.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a cannabis doctor, and he was talking about the importance of having balance of CBD and THC. And
Right.
the CBD balances out the psychoactive effects of THC, so you don't get the psychosis, and you don't get like the wayward mind thoughts and all the rest of it. That's the theory behind it anyways. And what we're getting nowadays is super high THC strain and super low CBD. So people are like getting all the effects of the THC, and they're not getting any of the balance from the CBD. So it's like, again, like if you're going to use it, and you're going to like use it as a medicine, regulate your use with it and learn these things. Learn how to have a correct balance between CBD and THC, like learn how to regulate how much you use a day, because there's been many studies where small amounts of cannabis increase serotonin production in the body.
Oh wow.
Small amounts of cannabis daily increase serotonin production. High amounts has the opposite effect.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this
Sure.
is the
Sure.
importance of regulating things. Is like in low amounts. Like if you were to be able to, and this is the thing. How do you use a low amount? You roll a joint, like you have a joint or something like that. But like when you have something like an oil or a butter or something like that, you can really get your dosage down to such a small specific
Yeah.
dose.
Sure.
And using in that low dose is actually really beneficial. But most people don't have the willpower to continue doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
I've got to say, a lot of our community would struggle to have that low amount.
And just like medicines, man, it's not a medicine without side effects. All medicines have their side effects somewhere. But people just have to balance out, is this helping me through what I'm needing to go through? Am I blocking myself by doing this? Am I doing this to bypass and avoid? And it's like just really inquiring about the use is a really useful practice. So.
Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about as well was I came to you, and I think it was with my partner at the time, and I came to you and Amy, and I don't know if we were just having tea or what we were doing, but we were hanging out for some reason anyway. Maybe we were just catching up, and I said to you, I said, look, man, I don't believe all this fucking sexual abstinence shit before ceremonies. I said to you, for me, like, I think that is a hangover from colonization and Christianity. I don't even know if these indigenous people used to have these practices prior to Christianity, but this idea that we should abstain from sex before we go into ceremony, it just feels like it's more patriarchy, it's more like shaming and demonizing of sexuality. Now, I don't know where you're at with that now, but I like the way you responded to me at the time, but I'm just curious, where are you at with that now? What do you think about abstaining from sex before ceremony or sexuality when it comes to plant medicine and stuff?
I guess it depends, because there's a difference between like a loving connection relationship and having like a one night stand with someone on the street as well.
Especially on the street,
I find that, for myself, and like I'm only subject to like my own beliefs and values around my experiences with relationships and stuff like that as well. So I feel like there's such a vast difference between if you have like a loving, compassionate partner and you're having sex with them as being so different than meeting a random person and going to their apartment and leaving before the sun comes up or something like that,
Sure.
And I feel like that's kind of the line that's like hard to navigate and hard to walk around as well. For myself, my view on this really shifted recently, actually, when my wife and I were going through IVF, and they were saying like I had to masturbate. I had to masturbate to keep recreating the sperm inside of my body.
Okay.
And like after I hadn't masturbated in years, and I was like, fuck, like,
all right.
yeah, like, okay, like this is interesting, like taking me back to my teenage sort of years. But
wait a minute. What do you mean you hadn't masturbated in years?
It just wasn't a thing, bro. Like I didn't have that impulse, like, you know.
Were you and Amy particularly sexual? Like,
not overly. Like, no. Like before I met Amy, I was single for like a long time. And
Yeah.
like I just had no interest in women. Like none. I was like, I'm done. Like I had so much trauma in my other relationships. I was like,
wow.
Fuck it. Like I don't want to experience this again.
Yeah.
And I was like super shut off to relationships. You know, just like I didn't want a part of it. And I just didn't have any sexual drive, man. Like it just wasn't.
Oh, even
there.
when you were single?
Yeah, when I was single. Like,
you weren't masturbating?
No, just not.
Okay.
Not there, man. Like I don't know. It just it wasn't there. Like definitely in my younger years of life, like for sure, like porn addictions to the degree at the age of 14, 15, you know, like playing mobile phones was so bad for you back then. But like at that stage, like I don't know, I'd just been so hurt, man. Like in a couple of my relationships, I've been so hurt, and
Did that have to do with sexual infidelity?
Not so much.
Not specifically? Okay.
Nah, like I definitely carried sexual trauma in my really young years of life, like having sexual like relationship with a close friend, and like at the time it was just like felt like an exploration. Like I was so fascinated with the human body, and then you get to like 10 or 11 and you're like, fuck, this isn't right, you know, with another male friend, obviously.
Were they a similar age?
Yeah, similar age, man. And they were a little bit older than me, and it got to the point where like I felt like I realized like it didn't, again, that same feeling like later on in life, like this doesn't resonate with me, like this feels off.
Okay.
And whenever it was brought up, I would try to find ways around that practice per se.
Brought up as in the friend would say, let's play that game again.
Yeah.
And you'd say, oh no, let's play something else. Let's not do that anymore. I
started to realize how uncomfortable it made me feel, but I also felt like he was my only friend.
Right.
And if I didn't play along, I wouldn't have any friends. I would have no one, you know. So it gets to the age of like 10, 11, 12, and I'm starting to feel like quite pressured into things as well.
Can I just ask, because I don't want to pathologize or influence in any way, shape or form, it's just a pure curiosity. At that age, 10, 11, are you starting to become aware of what sex is, and that's influencing your thinking about what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like there was a time period where it's like, this is practice for girls and all the rest of it. You know? But like there's also like other parts where it's like we look at what was happening in our life, like when that was opening and expanding, it was like we were using more and more drugs as well. So it's like there was a level of, well, I was specifically as well, there's a level of trying to like suppress and squash what was going on, and just feeling like what do I do, but feeling so much shame around it as well, like, you know, feeling so much guilt and shame, and realizing like all of these things. And it wasn't until a ceremony a couple of years ago, and I brought this up in a sharing circle, and I spoke about it, and I had someone come to me after, and I was like, bro, like, didn't you know, like back in like Rome or whatever, it was like, or Greece or something like that, like, it was common for boys to have their first experiences with other boys. And I was like, fuck, I wish someone told me that when I was like 10 years old, you know. It would have saved me so much trauma in my life. And like that definitely like left an impact on me, like for a long time.
Because I don't want to give the wrong impression to anyone watching this in terms of condoning, you know, sex before you're the age of consent and all that stuff. But I do want to say that it's not as simple as black and white, as any sexual contact prior to that age is sexual abuse. If two friends consenting are exploring their bodies with each other, it's not as black and white as that sexual assault. You know what I mean? The kids are innocent and they're curious about these things.
I don't have any blame. I don't have any. I don't feel that way at all. Like we were just confused kids, like really confused kids who just like didn't know, you know.
Sure.
And like again, like when you get hooked into like drugs at a young age, and you're getting like dopamine fixes from everything, you know.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And like you just get lost a little bit, and like I'm really grateful for that relationship and that connection. Like I look back, like aside from those little games that we would play, like the the other things we would do in terms of exploring the wilderness and all the rest of at young ages was incredible.
Yeah.
Like I would have never had those experiences without a friend like that.
Have you been able to maintain the friendship as adults, or has that?
Not so much.
Sure.
Like there comes a point where like a lot of people in my life, like I don't really have a connection with anyone from the time before I left to Australia, you know.
Your high school friends? No.
Nah, like just on such a different wavelength, man. You know, I found like that was one of the main reasons why I left as well, was like I was influencing them, they were influencing me, and it was just all terrible negative influence on everyone, you know.
Wow.
And when you go through these big changes of like realizing how abusive you've been to yourself, and you try and start correcting this, when you fall back around other people who are still abusing themselves, it's a really hard energy to be around.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
I can't be, like I'm too
Yeah,
vulnerable to
totally.
be back in this space, you know. And I found myself, you know, even after 3 years, like I came back from Australia pretty much unrecognizable. Like if you knew me before I left, like you
Yeah.
didn't know me when I came back.
Sure.
And when I went to the first little gathering, I was there for like 2 hours, and I just can't be here. Like
Yeah.
same mate, sitting on the same couch, drinking the same beer, like
Yeah.
you know, 5 years later, and it's just like nothing had changed, no one had grown, like
And
you know.
and part of it, James, I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not necessarily so much that you were judging them and looking down. Well, you're not a very critical person, so you wouldn't be looking down at them, but it wasn't so much that you were judging them or not enjoying it, but some aspect of it was there's a risk if you stay with these people, you could get dragged back.
Vulnerability, man.
Right.
Like, yeah, my
Right.
own vulnerability. Like the space that I created for myself was so fresh and
Yeah.
so new, and like I was only just starting to step into these new shoes of being.
Yeah.
In a different way.
Yeah.
And like I just found like all of us, like we're a product of our environment, you know, and like epigenetic suppression, like that epigenetic expression, that environment around us is like going to control how we express ourselves genetically as well. And I guess there's a big feel of like being around those influences and feeling that frequency, like in yourself, trying to meet it in the middle somewhere.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
just naturally, like
Totally.
there's no effort or anything focus required. It's just naturally being around it. And I just noticing like that weakness and that vulnerability still, and not feeling like I was strong enough to be in a space like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, these doctors tell you got to start jacking off again.
Yeah, man. Then
Is that nice? Were you like, oh fuck, this is actually really good, I've been missing this?
I don't know, I still found it a little bit awkward actually. Like,
Shameful?
yeah, I don't know if it would be shameful.
Okay.
I just I've got a wife, like I don't need to do that, you know? Like I just like to
I was in a sexless marriage for about 12 years of the marriage. There was
Yeah.
so little sex,
Okay.
and I constantly wanted sex. I mean, I wasn't pestered. Like after all, I didn't even ask anymore, right? Because you just don't want to get told no again
Yeah.
and again and again. So for me, self-pleasure was the only sexual pleasure I was getting for most of my marriage.
Yeah.
But for you guys had a healthy sexual relationship.
Yeah.
You were satisfied with sex. You'd had an awkward relationship with masturbation and that kind of thing. You hadn't masturbated for years. Now you're being told you need to masturbate, and it brings up some stuff. It's
Well, it was a learning actually, because like again, this was leading on from like 100 ceremonies or whatever that we did, where it's like you're not allowed to have sex beforehand.
Yeah.
And when you're drinking medicine every 2 weeks for 3 years, it's like,
Oh, shit.
you know, like
It doesn't leave you a lot of time.
It doesn't leave you much gap, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, but it made me realize like that behind all of it, you know, your question was how do I sit with all of this inside of ceremonies, was like it made me realize that physiologically there's actually a benefit to it.
Yeah.
In terms of reproducing fresh sperm
Right.
for fertility as
Right.
well.
Okay.
And that was like an eye opener. It was like, oh, like, you know, there is actually a
Physiological
benefit to
to
this, where
yeah.
the sperm are going to be more fertile and fresh. In saying that, like, you know, maybe that's why young kids are so potently fertile,
Right.
because they're masturbating all the time. You
Sure.
know? But yeah, it was an opener, and it made me just sort of start to contemplate and think like, okay, I guess this is another area of like a lot of my belief system's been dissolved in the past 2 years, and I'm in a process of just trying to figure out what do I believe in now, you know, if like all of that is kind of passed through, like where do where do I sit now? And I'm still in this process of just trying to figure things out, you know.
Because another thing I'm curious about, right? Like, is because one of the ideas about if you don't pleasure yourself or have sex, you know, for a week up to a ceremony, then you're not bringing the sexual energy into the ceremony. You know, you're not in that kind of sexual kind of place. But for me, if I don't have sex for a week, I'll be way more horny in the ceremony than if I pleasured myself the morning of the ceremony.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's something about repressing and suppressing sexual energy that doesn't work. Intrinsically, I think it doesn't work. I think the Catholic Church is a good example of that, with these horrible atrocities that the priests were doing to a lot of the choir boys and shit. Like to me, I think there's something about suppressing sexuality, which, like I think we need to be incredibly safe. I think we need to, in ceremonial space, there should be no sexual contact or anything like that, of course. But does people who, like, are people who are having sex before a ceremony, are they more sexually leaky, or is the person who's been abstinent for a week more sexually leaky? Like, I'm not sure it's that cut and dry.
I have no idea, and like I have in terms of like these fields of like medicine work, I have such a limited experience. Like, honestly, like there's such a vast ball of different practices of ayahuasca and ceremonies out there, like you couldn't even fathom. Every single tribe has a different way of practicing and working with it, and it's just like it's such a big kettle of fish out there, and my experience is just a tiny little blip.
Me too, brother. Me too. 100%.
I don't know, man. Like I can't make any really judgment calls on it, and I'm with you. Like, I'm in this stage of my life where I'm questioning everything as well. I'm like, but why? Like, why have I thought that for so long? Or where did I get that belief system from? Is that actually how things are? And I guess that's, again, it's like the stage of my life, the cycle of life that I'm in is a rapid growth and expansion at the moment, and that's coming from being really inquisitive and like sometimes dissolving like thoughts and belief systems that have been there for a long time, and recognizing like I've been holding on to them out of fear. Like, you know, a really big thing for me was like being in ceremonial spaces and having this talk about entities and attachments.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this shit up. Let's go. What the fuck is going on there?
And like I guess like I just kept having a thing coming through, like all is the self, like in the entirety of all that is, like in the highest level of consciousness, all is the self. Yeah?
Yes.
So like then these entities, that's an aspect of me, right? That's a part of me.
This is what I've been saying, but a lot of people don't agree with that.
That's a part of me. But the other thing that I like to point to is like there's another thing which I wouldn't refer to as an entity, but I would refer to as a thought form.
Okay.
Yeah. A negative thought form.
Okay.
Yeah. And a negative thought form being a matrix of energy that is bound together with similar negative thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have 7 billion people on Earth or whatever, and you have 200 million having similar thoughts and frequencies of how fucked everything is.
Okay.
How crazy it is, how helpless everything is.
Okay.
All of that thought holds a specific frequency.
Okay.
Yeah. That almost matches and merges together.
Okay.
To create a thought form. A really dense, heavy energy.
And where would that thought form live in space-time?
Everywhere.
In the zeitgeist.
Everywhere.
It's available.
It's everywhere.
It's available in consciousness.
It's everywhere.
It's a construct in consciousness that you can tap into.
It's in the field of Gaia.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's everywhere in the field of Gaia.
Yeah.
And what opens you up to that thought form are thoughts on a similar frequency to that thought form.
Okay.
So when you have a thought that's similar to what that energy matrix is made of, it pulls you into all of those other thoughts and emotions that other people have experienced in the same sort of path.
Okay.
Yeah? And those can become very strong and very dense and very heavy. Yeah. And you find yourself in a ceremony space. Someone has a thought, or they've been having this played thought, which is attaching them to a really dense collective thought form.
Okay.
Yeah? And that's affecting them really adversely. Someone else in the space who's maybe had similar traumas has a slightly similar frequency, that then has a similar thought and
links them into
jumps over to them, and then they start getting affected by this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like to think like it's all being created and fed by us, by everyone here, not just a single person.
Yeah.
And like what you feel is not your own. Like, there are things that come up in these emotions, but I believe that all emotion is collective, and emotions hold a field
Yeah,
like
right.
specific
I'm with you.
emotions.
Yeah, totally.
And like when you do something and you feel guilty, like it's not just your guilt, it's also the guilt of everyone else who's experienced something like that as well.
I like this a lot. There's so many things I want to say about this. What's the time going? Okay, we got a few more minutes. Okay. So I've really struggled with this idea that we go into ceremonial space and the shaman or the space holder or the server or whatever name they give themselves is battling external demons and entities that are trying to get into the space, and they're doing this spiritual superhero shit where they're fighting these demons, right? I'm not saying that's not true. I'm not saying that doesn't go on, but I've struggled with that idea. The way I've conceptualized what's going on is similar to you, but I think you've added to what I've been thinking in a way that I'm going to sit with a lot, because I really love that idea. I've said that I don't believe that's happening. I've said that what I think is happening is we're all coming into the group together, and we all bring our conscious awareness as well as our unconscious, and these demons or these entities are actually just aspects of self that are suppressed or forgotten or whatever, and are not external demons that are being sent to us by other shaman or battling tribes or whatever. It's literally just the stuff that we bring in the room in our unconscious, and it might look like we're doing a possession on someone, exorcism on someone, but actually that's just an unresolved aspect of self, an unresolved trauma, processing energy through the body. What you're saying, I think, is powerful, because you're combining the two things. You're saying it is just the unconscious and the thoughts and the emotions of the people in the room, but they are tapping into the collective consciousness, because in the collective consciousness there are these objects of consciousness which you call thought forms, negative thought forms, which we can link into. And I think that's an awesome model. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you know, like these things with demons and spaces, like it was interesting. I've been doing a lot of work through a lovely teacher, a music teacher, and he lived with Santo Daime and teaches a lot of the Santo Daime traditions. And for those of you who don't know, Santo Daime is a religion based in Brazil that practices ayahuasca, generally with a Catholic background as well. And this was created in the early 1900s by a guy named Mr. Irene, who was like very, very poor and was in search for wealth. And he'd heard about people in Peru drinking this sticky jungle brew and like basically like praying for abundance and stuff like that. And he made the journey over, and in his first ceremony, he said like his documents were everyone in there was praying to Diablo or Satan.
Oh right.
Yeah, and all he could see.
All the indigenous people were praying to evil.
Yeah, for wealth, for manifestation. Like, you know, they were praying to Diablo, and all he could see was crosses. All he could see was light and crosses, and like he was just started to receive there's a different way to do this. Okay. So he went into the jungle and started to receive the doctrine of the Santo Daime, and started to write all the hymns and the songs that they still sing today. And he created Santo Daime, acquired a piece of land, and people just started moving there. They started making medicine, and they create community, and they created all the songbooks. But I found it really interesting to hear like that was how that was founded.
Yeah, I had no idea that was how. Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's like 1906 or early 1900s. So I found that really interesting, and I think on myself it's like maybe in terms of like this development, maybe there's a benefit for viewing. It's all to the perception. Maybe they find a benefit in viewing things the way they do because they find it helpful to shift that energy.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it. That's exactly what I think. If the way of conceptualizing is it's a demon coming in and I'm doing an exorcism, if that helps you move the energy through the body and do the healing, that's fucking awesome. Because what's really going on in space-time, I don't know if any of us know, right? But if this model works and helps healing, then believe that that's what's happening. And if it makes more sense to you to this rational, reductionist physics, biology view of life, and that helps you to have good energy and be a good friend and a good then that's awesome too. Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. I love that. So how did the IVF work out for you?
Good. Yeah, so we have 11 weeks left. Yeah, so we do October 4th, man. So
I'm so happy for you guys, man. I am so fucking happy for you guys.
And it's cool. I've been like having such cool little songs come through just to sing through like the birthing process. And,
really?
It's changed so much inside of me already. So I'm so grateful, like so blessed. We've got a beautiful little baby girl coming through. So
James, I am so happy for you guys.
Thanks, brother.
I'm so fucking happy for you guys. That's beautiful. Hey, should we do it? We said should we do a freestyle at the end?
Yeah.
Can we do a collaboration? Yeah.
I don't have my harp down here, but I got my guitar.
Cool. No, you play some guitar and I'll do some singing, and we'll make it happen. That was fucking beautiful, man. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. First episode that I'm going to air with a friend. And he's going to come back with a guitar. And we'll just do a little improvisation to wrap things up. If he's not back in a few seconds, I'll stop it so it doesn't get boring. I think I'm going to stop it for a couple of seconds so it doesn't get boring. Mind you, I could say some shit, right? Yeah, just I know what I'll do. So the reason I asked James, just so you guys know, James is an amazing healer. He's trained in a bunch of different modalities, healing modalities, and he makes his own rongo, his own medicine. They're called Lightworker Studios. They make these different sprays. Is that visible? They make these beautiful sprays. This here is the crown jewel, in my opinion. This is the crown jewel of their rongoa. This particular medicine, I know people who've got like aches and sprains, bad backs for lives and stuff. They say that this stuff here, this particular medicine, is a healing balm that heals their pain and their aches and sprains in ways that no other deep heat or anything like that even comes close. So just doing a little shout. I was like, what am I going to say while you're out of the room? I'll do a little shout out. So you can contact, I'll put links to where you can get their medicine from, as well as links to their studio if you're interested in some of the, what are some of the healing modalities that you do? It's not Reiki and stuff, it's whole, here we go.
We're running a lot of group workshops at the moment. Okay. So we tried to, after building the space, we had the intention of like having winter as a place just for people to come and get together. And it's always a time where people tend to isolate. So we wanted to just provide a space where people can just come, not feel like they need to communicate, but just be in a space with others, find safety and connection and hang out. So we've got a Kambo ceremony next weekend on the 27th, Hape Sananga ceremony, which is a koha event on the Sunday, on the 28th. It's just a little 2-hour workshop for people interested in Hape and Sananga. And then we have our regime coming up again, and a music day on the 10th of August, which is just a place just for people to come and learn some songs and like sink into some medicine music as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome, brother. So I'm going to put links to your site and stuff like that so people can find the rongoa and their timetable and stuff like that. Beautiful, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you for showing up, brother.
You're welcome, bro. Hey.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, brother. Yeah, it's nice to be able to have open, honest conversations. It's always a thing that we all struggle with, is honesty, not just to others, but to ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have other people who actually ask us questions worth answering, things that actually help us uncover more about ourselves, and it's nice to be comfortable enough to answer honestly. So thank you.
It's a privilege to be at this point in our lives where we can be honest, right? You know? Because it's not fucking easy. Yeah, there's been times in our lives where we want to be on a camera talking about these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've been given a lot of support. We've been given a lot of love.
Yeah, and you got to take responsibility, you know, because where there's shame, there's blame. And shame can come from just like in certain elements, just not taking responsibility for things. You know, just saying, I fucked up, I'm going to take responsibility for it, I'm not going to be shameful. And from owning that, then we don't blame things or others around us, and we can then be in a space where we can be honest with ourselves, you know? Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.